Very good. Okay, let's go ahead and call to order this special meeting of the Easton Board of Education, Thursday, April 8th at 2021 at 8 p.m. Members in attendance, I see Jeff Parker, I see Jenny Cheetah, I see Randy Hicks, I see Gretchen Goldstein. Just looking to see if Jenny joined us. I'm sorry, Jenny, if Devin joined us. Sorry, Jenny. I don't see Devin. I'm sure she's on her way, so we'll see her shortly. And of course, John Stinson in attendance. We will, our first item on the agenda is public comment. I do want to just sort of preface, just to make sure that everybody's clear on the purpose of tonight's conversation. Because, obviously we have, sort of a different process simply by virtue of, each year being different. But also this year we've sort of gone about it in a way of trying to just sort of set up first what is the body of items that we want to talk about, and then sort of step away, think about it, and then come back and deliberate in session. And that's very much in the same spirit of what we're doing here tonight. We are here tonight to spend time talking about the various options of how we take the budget that we approved and reduce it as is necessary per the budget that we got back from the Board of Finance, which is a reduction of $150,000. Now, we will be talking about a number of items tonight, and no one should walk away saying they're cutting this and they're cutting that. That is not what we're doing tonight. Tonight, we're talking about everything, trying to get out all the ideas so that we can do the best that we can for the students, given the resources available to us. It is worth noting that, we are not required, as a part of this process to have a sort of penny accurate accounting of exactly how we're going to spend that money. So we do have some ability to, while it has to be a responsible accounting of how we intend to spend the money, it does not have to exactly get to that 150. So we have a little bit of leeway there, and we'll talk about that in more detail tonight. So with that in mind, I want to open it up to public comment. For those unfamiliar with our process, if you can use the participant window to indicate that you'd like to speak by just clicking the button to raise your hand, or turn on your video and wave us down. And we'll just give everyone a moment in case there's any public comment. And while I'm waiting for that, I'm making sure all of our board members and administrators are co-hosts so that they can unmute themselves as necessary. Okay. I'm not seeing anyone else. Anyone else see any? No. Okay. Very good. That'll take us to board member comment. Okay.
Let's go.
Hearing none, I think Jenny's spot on. Let's go. All right, so that takes us into discussion and possible action. Item A, review and discuss options for reconciling the approved budget. So I have a couple of thoughts just to sort of kick off the discussion. I know Dr. Harrison, our central office staff, and our building leaders work together to come up with some ideas as well. And I think, we want to entertain, a really robust discussion of the various things that could end up on the list. I will say, I think it will be useful for us to understand what our spend rate is for the year and what we are projecting. And I think Clarence, Mr. Zachary, is going to be able to give us some insights on that, I hope. I think that'll be useful. One reason that I think that may be useful is because there are some items on that we were estimating that we would want to spend as a part of next year's budget that actually should probably happen this summer professional development, for example, et cetera, that may be rightfully spent using any overages that we have, if there are reasonable overages. So that's one thing that we may want to consider in order for us to understand what the landscape looks like. It'll be helpful for us to know sort of what our burn rate is, and whether or not we're likely to have any overages. Anyone else have any other thoughts on sort of process in terms of starting? I think it actually would be useful if we start there, but if anyone else has any other opinions on that, I'm happy to entertain that. No? Okay. So Clarence, can we ask if you're able to, I mean, and if you don't have this off the top of your head, I know you sent a couple of documents, health insurance and budget object summary. Do you want to take us through and give us your thoughts on sort of what these are telling us right now?
Do you mind if I share my screen?
Please do.
All right. All right, so I sent you all a budget object summary. I don't forget how many days ago, but this is the same data as of 3/26 this afternoon. So what we do is we have, as I explained to you before, we have the MTD stands for what we spent month to date. That would be April. Year to date would be the year to date expenditures. Encumbered, things were encumbered. So I add what is listed as column I is anticipated expenditures, things basically I know we're going to have to pay. And basically those are all salary related or Social Security or Medicare, things that I know that we're going to have to pay. So when I back those out, that leaves me with the column J of unexpended budget. So as of today, if I back out the salaries, we're down to $153,000 that is available. But that doesn't mean it will still be available, because I think the number I sent you guys earlier was close to 200,000, which shows we spend money on an ongoing basis. So the problem with saying you want to use unspent funds in April is you got to get through May. You really don't have a good idea to the beginning of June.
Right.
Because you got to get through May. So there's about, if you take out the salaries, about 153,000 as of today. You're going to save some money next week because no one's going to be in the building spending money, hopefully. Then you got, a week or two in April left, and then you got to get through May, and that'll give you sort of a clear picture. Now, we've had some, I'll call it behavior corrections in some buildings. This is not Easton. This is in all three districts where people were ordering stuff that'll carry us the next year. I had to tell them, reject those recs and say, look, order what you need to get you through June, and let's just deal with that now. So we've had to do some of that sort of behavior correction. But right now, as of 3/26 this afternoon, I'm projecting 153,000 that's unallocated, which means it could become allocated tomorrow, a week from now. But as of right now, after I back up the salaries and Social Security, it's at 153,095.56.
Right. And just so everybody's, especially in the public, is clear, that doesn't mean, let's say magically that is the number that we landed at the end of the year. That doesn't mean we can simply say, great, shift that into that number. We would need to have a sort of righteous allocation of some of that to things that are happening before the end of this season, right? So that's actually, if there's $10,000 in some summer professional development that should start in June, that is a perfectly good use of that funds. But that doesn't mean that we, can just make up reasons to spend that 150. We have to do it the right way.
Can I ask a question? I'm not sure I'm understanding that explanation. So, okay. Clarence, do you mind if I ask a couple questions?
Of course, go ahead.
So you're predicting this amount unspent at the end of the year, barring any significant expenses, or is this what the balance sheet is at this moment in time?
This is what the balance sheet is at this moment in time after I backed out, expecting to pay all our salaries, which we're obligated to do. So that I'm not predicting this amount. I'm just telling you at this point in time, this is what we have. And my ability to predict as we get deeper into May, my ability to predict increases. But given that we have a whole month of May left and parts of April, I wouldn't say this is a number that I would predict. This is just what we have available after we back out the salaries.
Okay. Somebody else with more experience than I do, correct me if I'm wrong, we've been able to get pretty darn close to a really narrow estimate of where we're going to land at the end of the year in the past.
Generally, you
Just
are.
wondering
Generally, I would say typically that's easy to do, but this is not a typical year because we're having expenditures for things that you normally don't have to deal with, and we're having some things we're not spending on because of COVID. So it's just
Right.
it doesn't put me at a level of comfort to say unequivocally that will be available, because we're spending more in certain accounts than we normally would because of COVID. We're spending less in other accounts because of COVID. And
What accounts are we spending more in than we typically would?
I'll give you an example. Like we have, like for instance, we just spent this curriculum supplies. It's in the negative now because we agreed to spend $20,000 ahead of schedule for the math program. So that's $20,000 that we made a conscious decision to so it wouldn't be in next year's budget. That's $20,000 that negative 33 that we've already agreed to say we're going to do.
And
How is that COVID related?
I was using COVID as an example.
Okay.
and sorry, just a little bit more so everybody understands that one in particular. The the new math, textbooks ish, right? Sort of materials and process. There's a great advantage to us starting that work and getting those in the hands of our educators sooner. So it's a really good reason to use that money now as opposed to in the future. Right?
I would agree. Because you can start, because if we don't do it now, we wait until the summer, it means you got to pay extra money for the teachers to come in to do the PD,
Right.
whereas now you're already, it's essentially already paid for.
Right.
I'll give you an example here. See, the overtime is a negative. That's related to cleaning and things of that nature. We wouldn't have that. So there's an example of something that it's not a lot of money, but it is in the negative that we have to sort of contemplate.
Can I ask
I'm
sorry, go ahead, Jenny.
Sorry, let me just finish up. Is there anything else, any other bills that we know are upcoming? I mean, as much as humanly possible, if we can take into account expected expenditures and ask our building leaders for estimates of further expenditures. I'm just saying any legwork we can do in that area that's going to get us closer to a number at the end of the year is going to protect our programs and our students from cuts.
Just give an example, account 330, other professional services. There's approximately $32,000 in that, but that's what we paid a lot of our special ed services. So that could go away. It may not, but you just don't know because it depends on what the needs of the children are. Whereas the water one, that we may end up having a balance there because there's been less kids in the building, less water usage, but it all depends on the actual consumption. I can't tell you what the consumption's been. So I suspect we may have a balance in the water account, but I don't know what it will be just because there are fewer kids in the building.
Did you back out any of the just like, did you back out any of the, in addition to salaries, any of the kind of just normal monthly expenses? Like trying to think through, like for example, like a monthly electric bill that we could guesstimate to kind of get us to.
The problem with electric is, once again, the usage has been variable because we haven't been fully occupied in the building. So we have the sensors in the room. So if the room's not occupied, they're off. So you're not getting a good idea of what sort of normal usage is. So electricity right now, let me see if I'm reading this correctly. We're showing a negative right now in electricity. Now that's just based on what was budgeted. So that's showing a negative. So maybe we didn't budget enough last year, but we're showing almost $29,000 negative in electricity right now.
That's because Randy promised the solar panels would be up and running.
Yeah.
And then he took away the sun. So question about the cleaning expenses, right? I think some of this is being driven through sort of additional need for cleaning. And I know that part of some of the expenses that we've incurred this year is about the bus cleaning and sort of going above and beyond for the bus cleaning. Do we know if we have already been reimbursed for that, or if we are going to be able to be reimbursed for that?
We got reimbursed for up through December. That was part of the code, the $87,000 or $81,000 that we talked about. That was detailed in that. We have not been reimbursed so the second, now that we know there's a round two, we're in the process of doing that application, but that obviously hasn't been completed as of yet.
Okay.
But we've already spent that money for the cleaning, correct, Clarence?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we have money coming back. I was looking at the grants. What other grant money do you expect to arrive before the end of the year that would improve our bottom line?
We have some funds available, Mr. Parker, that could improve our bottom line. This may be remedial, but we have grants that last over a couple years. So we have different grants and different, what I call phases. We have some grants that are in year one, some grants are in year two. So if we want to be really aggressive, since there's some things that are in year one that we could try to push over, and that's the way the state prefers to do it. We haven't been doing that way. And our hope was to start doing that July 1, but we can look into try to do it now, even though no one, our team has sort of contemplated, putting those funds to use right, in year one, but we can try to look into doing that. And that would increase.
I'm sorry.
I would say that would increase our availability, because then basically it would be able to relieve the pressure on the operating budget.
I'm looking at the grant money that we have received so far this year. It's $325,260. Last year we received $490,770. And I understand that these things move back and forth, but one thing that doesn't move back and forth is being reimbursed for open choice. Now, last year, open choice, we received $60,000. And that does not show up on the list for monies that we've received so far this year. Is it reasonable to expect that before the end of the school year that we'll receive another check for $60,000 for open choice?
If the same number of students were enrolled as last year, yes, sir.
Okay.
It's all based on the number of students. So if we have the same number of students, yes, it's reasonable to expect that.
Okay.
I need to confirm that the enrollment's the same, but assuming that factor, yes.
We still have money for paras. That's IDEA grant. It doesn't look like we've received all of the funds for that yet. Do you have a breakout of what more we expect there?
I have a breakdown of what we've used, but in reference to, you mean in reference to drawing down or new grants, sir?
No, these are grants that we get every year that help underwrite.
No, I'm familiar with IDA, but you're talking about a new IDA or our existing IDA?
Current.
That's just a question of drawing down. So it's there. We'd have to draw it down.
Well, those, I guess what I'm asking is those dollars don't have appeared to have all arrived yet.
No, sir, because the special service department hasn't drawn it down as of yet.
Okay. So there's an additional revenue stream there that I think might be coming. And let's see, has Reading paid their portion of the special ed director? Because I know that we pay that in full, and then Reading pays us for their portion. Has that happened yet?
I have to check, sir, see if we've cut the check.
Okay, well, last year that was $14,170 well, actually there were two payments. I'm sorry. One was for $14,170 and one was for $12,595. So these are monies that we get each year. These monies are added to our surplus total. And so understanding that we have those dollars coming back, I think maybe offset some of the concern that might exist that we're going to come closer to zero than what we had planned. I think we'll probably end up closer to 200,000.
There definitely should be some ebb and flow, sir. There should be some outflows and some inflows, correct?
Okay.
I've got just a couple of quick ones. Have we had anybody leave the district mid-year this year? Any teachers? Any quote unquote breakage?
Not that I'm aware of. That'd be a question for Vicky, but I'm not aware of anyone that's sort of left mid-year. That's a question for Vicky.
How about Kim or Sue? Are you guys aware of any teachers that have left this year in either one of your buildings?
No one at Keller.
No one at Staples either.
Okay. My second question, Clarence, just on the object summary there, under substitutes, it looks like we've spent
Randy,
about.
can you give me an account number on the far left, please?
121 to 124, it looks like.
Okay, got you.
So it looks like we've spent about 180 year to date, and we've got another 71 that you've encumbered for the remaining, I guess, 3 months, 2.5 months. Do we know, are these all long-term? We know we're going to have these substitutes?
There some are long-term or some are dated. So basically what we're finding with COVID, we have a greater need for substitutes than we typically have. So part of my equation is that I had about, $48,000 left available in the substitute line. I'm assuming it's going to be gone because of the need that we've had trying to get, matter of fact, we're having problems finding subs just because there's such a great need. So I made an assumption that we will use that remaining 48,000. So if that doesn't come to fruition, that's an additional 48,000 that would be available.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the one you sent out on the 7th, but you've updated it pretty significantly. You took another, well, I'm not sure, but can you do a quick total on what year to date your number is? I just look like 180 in my head, but.
You mean for the subs?
Yeah.
Sure, hold on.
Like line 35 to.
And 11 is SSCS and 12 is HKMS, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Just trying to narrate for the public, try to keep people with us.
Samuel Staples.
Well, here's a question. Randy, you want certified or non-certified or both?
No, I just summed like what you have there is lines like 35 to 41 or
It's
42.
Hold on, I gotta move. I got my Zoom is this number here, Randy. The 202.
Yeah. Okay. So that number changed 20 grand or so from when you sent it out to us the other day. Okay.
Well, here and Randy, here's the reason why it will change. A lot of numbers change is tomorrow's a payroll day. So what I sent you is pre us running payroll. So the numbers will be off because of payroll.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fair enough. But the numbers that Jeff was talking about earlier, open choice and then some sped reimbursement and then money's maybe coming back from Reading. You think that's over 100,000?
Reading, it's about 25. Open choice will depend on the number of students. And like I said, I have to confirm how many students we have last year compared to this year to see if it'll be apples to apples. And the one thing that you can definitely rely on, it will be the IDA grant. So that's been set. It's just a question of drawing it down.
And how much is that number, you think, Clarence?
The IDEA it's 34 in 34,000 in Keller and 34,000 in Staples.
All right, so it's more like 150,000, those three numbers. Okay, all right.
And it doesn't look like we've received the excess special education.
We have not received excess costs yet. Generally, they announced that in March, but the state's having any financial questions or concerns, they delay the announcement. So they haven't announced yet what it will be. So once that announcement comes, we can reflect the actual number instead of the estimated number we have there.
Mm-hmm. And what do you have as the estimate? It was a lower estimate than what I was used to saying.
Let me find it.
Change that.
Yep.
Jeez.
We've got it at
50.
Yeah, around 50.
Well, that might be an all-time low.
I don't know how that, like I said, unfortunately, I wasn't here for the budget last year, so I can't, speak to why that number was put in there.
I'm just saying, I mean, it's
That's a good thing, right? That's a good thing.
That's right.
So,
It's actually a good thing because that's probably a reflection of the Bridges program.
Mhm.
So we're not spending as much up front, and therefore we don't get as much coming back at the end of the
I
year.
would say it's not only is a good thing, it's a compounding thing, because what you get back is a lower percentage than what you could save on the front end.
Well, yeah, we get 70% of about 70%. So yeah.
Yep. Okay. So just on the subject, sorry, go ahead.
I'll say, do you want me to keep this sharing, or do you want to?
Yeah, I think it may be useful.
Okay.
And we'll see how we want to pivot. But so just on the topic of the sort of our remaining dollars for the end of the year, grants, reimbursements, sort of all those things together. It sounds like we are going to have an ability to sort of shift some of that, the sort of the items on our budget that were going to happen next year that could rightfully happen this year.
Yeah.
Do we want to take a look?
Mr. Chairman, if you ask me, I would say yes. My only hesitation is having not been here last year and know how things typically function. The things that Mr. Parker brought up are usual, but not having the knowledge of how it's done here, I'm not comfortable saying unequivocally what it will be.
Right.
I'd have a better idea probably this time in May, just so I can, because it's sort of like, I don't want to speak on something that I haven't seen before.
So I would say if we think that it's, and I trust Jeff's institutional knowledge here and experience, and Randy's as well, and I know Jenny's been on the board for quite some time too. If we think it is very safe to say we probably have 100,000 there, I don't think even that we would plan to try to shift $100,000 worth of next year's budget to this year's spending. I think it's probably a number much less than that. So I think even when we're sort of looking at that money, we're looking at a portion that is well within the margins. Is that a fairly safe assumption, Jeff, Randy, Jenny?
I think that's very safe. But again, all the curriculum work that we have in the budget, and it's about 80,000.
Right.
And Stephanie, jump in and tell me if I've got this wrong. But most of that will at least start. Certainly, the planning will in the month of June. So it is certainly within our purview to be able to take dollars out of this year to pay for curriculum that's going to start in this year.
John, can we actually take the screen off so that
Yeah,
we can see everyone?
I was just about to say, I don't think we need the spreadsheet for this. Thanks, Jenny. Stephanie, does that sound, what Jeff just said, does that sound about right?
If it's possible to do so, we can certainly begin curriculum work in June after the school year ends. So the math work specifically includes an order of materials that will enable us to provide professional development for the K-5 teachers on the May early dismissal day. So we've hired the company, their consulting team, to come and conduct trainings to introduce the teachers to the new program and provide the teachers the basic set of materials so that they can, sort of head off at the end of the year with a good sense of what's to come, and also the materials in hand, which I think will be incredibly helpful. In terms of other curriculum work, we would typically not begin that work until the start of the fiscal year on July 1. If it's possible to begin the work earlier, my experience in years past when I've been able to hold over some of the money until the end of June is that teachers are willing and interested to do that work while they're still sort of fresh off of the year.
And do you find that to be effective for the sort of for the ultimate purpose of professional development? Do you find it to be that's a worthwhile use of their time starting in June? Okay. Good. Okay.
So Stephanie, I have a question just related to that as well. So when that work starts in June, if it continues into July, is the intent there that we would pay the So pay for all of the work that they would be doing into the, across the fiscal year, that we would pay it ahead of time?
Right now, we can encumber as long as it's encumbered,
Yep.
we're fine.
Yep.
The work starts in June and we encumber it. It can go in, because remember, we don't really close our books to August, so
Right.
there's a what we call the 13th period. And so the 12 months is a 12th period, but there's a 13th period in schools because they know things sort of carry over.
So I defer to Clarence. So in the past, we've really had more of like a timesheet. And so on the date that the teachers signed in, they were paid out of that year. The exception being if we were to register someone to go to a conference, and in order to save the space in the conference, we needed to pay earlier, even though the conference was not going to occur until the next fiscal year. That's been a more typical exception.
I just want to remind the board, a couple of years ago, we had the issue of the oil tank at Helen Keller. And we had allotted $60,000 for its removal. Well, the work barely started in June. The tank didn't actually finally get remediated because we actually didn't end up taking it out. We just filled it up with sand. That took place in August, about 10 days before school started. So so long as the intent is there and the money is set aside, we're within our right to use it.
Yeah, we just to Mr. Parks, as long as we encumber it, there's no issue.
We're good to go.
So just two words of caution, and I think I think we're on the right track here. I think this is really useful. But sort of two words of caution. One is always when there's money left over that should go back to the town, it goes back to the town, right? Like that we've built that trust that this is our process. Yep. We're using it for things that make sense to use it for this year, that allows us to get ahead of that work, and and only when it makes sense. The other piece of caution is we should be mindful of any looming liabilities, and I think there might be a bit of a landmine with some food services costs, and there could be other things that we're not thinking about. So I know we're probably going to dive in the May 25th at the tri-board meeting on some of the sort of the overages in the food services budget, and we probably need to learn more about that to make an informed decision. Is that a $5,000 thing that's going to hit us? Is that a 20? I don't know what our share of that is going to be at this point, and I don't know if Clarence, you have.
I don't have our share, but it is prudent to have that caution, because we are given the lack of kids being in the building full. We're definitely running in the red in the food service accounts, and that's a tri-district issue.
Yep. Yeah, and Jeff, I know you raised that you raised that point earlier. Is there anything else that's on your mind about sort of looming sort of liabilities that we have?
No, I think the food service is the last one, and but from a revenue standpoint, I just want to make sure we have our ducks in a row in terms of the grant money, because that would really be helpful for us moving forward.
Yeah, here. So one other note. So are we good? Do we feel like we bottomed out on we feel like there is some money. We think there's an opportunity to spend some chunk of that on professional development?
No, please don't. I mean, I would like to know the numbers, but yeah, I think we've bottomed out on that. And as far as what are we talking about? We talk about 20,000, we talk about 10,000, we talk about 40,000. So we'll get to that. I'm going to throw a Clarence question out. So he's got 5 minutes to do the math, and maybe he already has it, but then we come back to it when we're talking about healthcare. But Clarence, if maybe you do a couple of different scenarios, but if you run out the rest of this year, assuming a monthly budget number of 190, whatever we budgeted monthly, 216, sort of where do we end up the year healthcare with our reserve? You follow me? Okay.
So that's the start of the 5 minutes for math, or maybe Clarence already has it.
Whatever.
Clarence, you're on mute.
He's doing math.
Yes, so, Randy, I said I can run it at the run rate. The issue is going to be sort of making assumptions about the income coming in. What I'll just probably end up doing is take an average of the previous 9 months and whatever that average is, use that for the income. Because we charge premiums, we collect income on that. So, but I can do that in the next 5 minutes or so.
Okay.
Hey, Randy, can I change my answer since he's doing math? I completely blanked out. There's actually been a couple of part-time positions that people resigned in the middle of the year.
Okay.
One was a part-time math paraprofessional. She left at the end of December. One was a kindergarten para. She left in January. We had a recess para who left in October. And we had our 10-month office assistant resign about a month ago.
Okay. Were these all folks that were replaced, Kim, essentially on par with?
I have replaced the part-time math para, the kindergarten para. I have not replaced the recess, and I have not replaced the 10-month office assistant yet.
Okay. Okay. And the reason for my question, Clarence probably knows this already, that we essentially encumbered 100% of all the salaries from.
Oh, Randy, you just were muted. I don't know how that happened.
Oh, yes, you do. You did that, John. You did that on purpose.
That's right. Oh, you're on to me.
No, in any event, it was just, we've encumbered all of the teacher salaries and the line items. And if we had some breakage, we might have whatever,
So,
3,000 there. So.
Yeah, Randy, it's like I wasn't aware of those things. Like Kim said, she replaced 2 of them, and the 2 she didn't replace. It's literally easier for me to just assume they're not there because the dollar amounts we save, it's every dollar counts, but it won't sort of move the needle, so to speak. Their paras are not teachers, are not administrators.
Right. Right. Yep.
Okay. So, and I think, yes, Randy, in answer to your question about the sort of what is the amount? Are we talking about 5,000, 10,000, 40,000 of professional development that happens this year? We'll figure that out. When I think about this, one of the things that's top of mind for me is looking at that one page of our budget presentation that was the new and restored positions and programs. And thinking about each one of those line items, I get very, very defensive on each one of those on the, sort of on their behalf. So to me, I feel like, obviously there was more than $150,000 worth of budget items there. So it wouldn't be everything on that page, but it would be a significant amount of the, half, basically, a little bit more than half of the stuff on that page. So that's a director of digital learning, PE professional, extracurricular stipend, social worker, 0.5, media specialist, 4th grade teacher. So part of, if we were only talking about how we take away from that page, it would be sort of catastrophic. But if what we're talking about is there is some money that we can use this year that was, budgeted for stuff next year, that reduces the impact on that page. It also, there are other places where we can find some of that. But I want to make sure that we're making smart decisions about that. So for instance, I think there's broad agreement that we care a lot about the media specialist at Helen Keller and making sure that we restore that position. I don't know that there would be a lot of support for saying, oh, you can save money by not having the media specialists, para, right? Or the, sort of the assistant there, because that's maybe exactly the kind of role that you need there. So these are the kinds of things that I think it's important for us to discuss and sort of get these ideas out and make sure that we all sort of have an opportunity to sort of put forth our sort of priorities for where we think we want to defend the positions. Anyone care to start?
John, I think it would be, we're going through these numbers. I want to get to a point where we really have an idea of exactly how much we need to cut. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't necessarily see the point of going through and saying, yes, we want to keep the media specialist. Yes, we want to keep this. Yes, we want to keep this, when
Yep.
so far it doesn't appear that it's necessary to address those positions.
Yeah,
Like the numbers, the proposals that Dr. Harrison sent to us, the possible scenarios, the potential overage at the end of the year,
Yep.
healthy health insurance reserve. I mean, I just don't think we're even in a position to need to address, certainly not the larger items,
Mhm.
the kindergarten teacher, the media center specialist. I mean, perhaps some of the smaller items, PE para for, just comes to mind as an example of a smaller number that may be sort of as a part of a package of smaller reductions. But
Yeah, I actually would like to make a forceful case for every item on there, including the PE para. And I've sort of made that case to the Board of Finance in previous presentations as well. I was thinking more, and I probably didn't say it clearly. I was thinking more of the sort of the things that are necessary to get the most bang for our buck out of these large investments. I also want to see, can we protect those as well? So, whether it's the person who is there helping the media center specialist, or it's sort of tech leads who are going to help in the buildings, who are going to help to execute the vision of the director of digital learning. It's like those sort of adjacent positions and monies. And I really hope we can get to the point where we can defend all of this stuff. But, I get your point. There are some things that we may lose. One other question.
No, that's not my point at all. My point is, I don't think we need to be having this discussion. I think we should get a sense of where we're going to be financially. What is that number going to look like that we actually have to reduce? Because I don't think it's $150,000 based on the conversations we're having so far. So I'm not sure. I guess I'm not understanding the reason for going down this list of items without a sense of what target number do we need to hit.
Yeah, so maybe I can make it more clear. So one of the thoughts that I was having is, are there other ways of funding some of these positions as well, right? So for instance, 0.5 social worker, is it possible that we can use some of the grant funds for the 0.5 social worker? And if somebody says that's a bad idea for this reason, like absolutely. But I want to think about, because if you do that, that's $51,000 out of that 150. Add that to the amount that we might have in excess at the end of the year that we can shift in PD. We're getting very close to that 150. And again, we don't even have to get to the 150. We could actually arrive at 130 and say that is close enough. That is a reasonable enough, to where we need to be to say we're good.
Well, John, to your point, and I think it's a good one. We're adding the 0.5 social worker, and part of the reason for that is certainly the social and emotional state of our kids and what they've had to endure in terms of COVID, and that fits right into the federal guidelines of what the feds have given us money to do, and that's to help our kids over that bridge. So it seems to me that whether it's the funds that we know about today for sure, which is the ESSER grant for $122,000, or whether it's the federal money that's going to be coming, which is in the neighborhood of $400K, which would be spread between now and December of 2024. Certainly the ESSER fund, we could take 51 out of that 122, pay for the social worker. That takes 50 off of the 150, and we're well on our way to the finish line.
And if I can add just one more point to sort of sum up my whole argument there, it's combination of something like that plus the unspent funds by the end of the year that can be shifted to PD work. Let's say we can get that somewhere around 100,000 in combination, and then you add in the completely reasonable assumption that we're going to have some breakage. We've accounted for 0 breakage in this. And the one thing that made a lot of sense to me about the argument from the Board of Finance was, you guys are being too conservative in your estimate. You are pretending like there will be no breakage. And we know that there's breakage every year. It's almost always at least, what, 30, right? At least
35 would be the lowest that it's been in 10 years.
That's, I mean, and maybe this is
We've had as much as 100.
maybe this is the 100-year storm, but through those three simple things, right? If we could use the sort of some of the grant funds to fund the 0.5 social worker, use some of the sort of unexpended funds for the for the PD work, and then just say, we know that there's going to be some, and it's going to be pretty close to this. So those three things, that's zero cuts to these positions. So,
If I could just jump in and say a word about the social work position. So that, I think that's a great idea. It's something that we discussed. I think it very much is in line with the four kind of allowable areas related to these federal funds. Here's the only challenge to that. That money is a 2-year grant. And so this is not creating a new position. This is taking a person who's in a 0.5 position and making them whole. Increasing that position to a full-time position would mean that particular employee would be expected to resign from their 0.5 position in another district. It's a big ask to expect them to resign from a position for a grant-funded position that will only last through 2 years. And I do think that there is a full understanding with everyone on the board of the need for this position going forward, but it would be hard to sort of guarantee that 2 years from now, we would be in a position as a district where we're going to fully fund that position minus the grant monies. So it's a tough place to be, and I think that's one of the areas, or one of the challenges with funding any positions out of this, out of any of the federal funds, unless there's a real clear plan for, this is just a temporary fix. So as we were talking about things on the list and kind of putting together those potential scenarios, that was one of the conversations that we had, just as far as the challenge with the social work position in general. You'll notice on the three scenarios, I was focused on looking at the entire 150. So how to get to that full number of a 150. It was helpful. I had a great conversation with Mr. Parker earlier today, just as far as getting a sense of past practices around the use of those unspent funds at the end of a year. I absolutely think that that's an appropriate approach. It is not an approach that every district takes. And so it was good to have that context in thinking about that. So I think that, to John's point, there is the possibility of, between anticipated breakage, the creative use of grant funds, unexpended funds for this year, that there's the potential for absorbing the $150,000 cut without significant impact on students.
John, can I just add a comment, since we're on the topic of the social worker? I've actually been really uneasy about the idea of using grant money to cover this position. I'd prefer if we can find a different workaround that we don't use it for this. I think we agree and support the need for it, even pre-COVID.
Yep.
I mean, we have heard so much from our building administrators about increased levels of anxiety, student need. And I think we're doing a better job of addressing it, but we need these hours even before this year. And I just want us to support it outright in the budget and be sure that we're expecting to support it as an ongoing position, as an ongoing increase. I mean, certainly we need to do our due diligence and evaluate on an annual basis and be able to articulate the benefits and provide the public with kind of a backward look at each year, seeing how has this increase benefited been a benefit to our students in the building. But I'm also concerned that 2 years from now, it looks like an uptick in personnel. We were able to secure this position and support from the community, Board of Finance, and ourselves, and they're always looking at headcount. And in a couple of years from now, if we're going to be basically be putting it back on the balance sheet again and looking for money for it, that, like Dr. Harrison was saying, it could potentially be an issue. So if we can,
yeah,
I'd rather we just leave it in as expected.
I agree with all the points you made. The only way that I think it would make sense is if we did have a plan for how this gets sort of incrementally baked in, whether it's sort of extension of other grant monies that may be available to actually take this to a 4-year period, which, there may be some opportunities there. And once you get to the 4-year, is it possible to sort of incrementally build in? So now it's a 0.5 from the regular budget, 0.7 from the regular budget, I would want us to be very thoughtful about that fiscal cliff that exists, where it's like, hey, suddenly this person isn't available to be funded through grant, and now we're really having to battle, and who knows what kind of situation we'll be in 2 years or 4 years. So I take your point, and I completely agree. This human being who is doing this very important work in our buildings deserves to know we fully appreciate the work that they're doing and believe in sort of that position.
And job security and the tendency for folks to for folks to migrate. I don't know in this job climate if I would want to take something that was not wasn't guaranteed to at least continue the way you would expect a normal.
If I can take the other side of the conversation, just to be argumentative, no. But seriously, we can do both, because if the money is available from the federal program or whomever, you can use it today. We'll have the conversation in 3 years. It'll be all of about a 0.2 as a percentage increase at that point to fund it. And excuse me?
It's actually 0.25, but you're right.
Well, I'm assuming the budget's going to go up in the meantime, but I hear you. Today it would be 0.25. But the point is that nothing's, I mean, we hire teachers, Kim hires teachers, Sue hires teachers. There's no guarantee that they're going to be needed or retained after a year or two. I get this person has been with the district potentially longer, and I understand what you're saying. I don't think anybody here is looking to give them a temporary 24-month position, unless for some reason, their services, we don't need the services anymore, which we all probably believe is highly unlikely. The difference, Jenny or John, is, you want to take the PE para and the tech assistant out, that's $50,000. If you don't do it today, if you don't use the federal money today, you're cutting $50,000 someplace else. So you're taking a body out if you don't do this.
Well, what if you trade what if you pay with the student activities with the grant? Because that's a grant funded, at least based on you keep the social worker in as a full-time social worker and pay student activities as a grant funded. It's a little bit less, like a $5,000, $6,000 difference.
Okay,
I don't love it, but we haven't. Yeah, I mean, it's a wash, but like that way, then you have the person doesn't feel like we're not fully funding that position if it's about a personnel.
Yeah, and I think it is. We should really make sure that we're exploring, sort of that, option A, option B, and making sure that we're bringing back a sort of a fully baked set of answers when we, try to finalize this on the 20th of April.
Kevin, I don't know that we can put that we can use federal money for the extracurriculars. I haven't read the detail of the new grant that we will be getting here, shortly.
Yeah,
But I don't know that we can do that going forward.
yeah, I just got a heads up that there's some interesting stuff there that may give us more flexibility. So, I mean, literally between getting it tonight and the 20th, we may have some other additional options.
Jeff, I feel very confident that we would be able to use that money for that.
You do? Okay. That's
Now the challenge is that that grant application process is I think it's due April 27th. I don't know how long it would take to get approval for, how long that's going to take to get approval. But it is a way to really connect it to one of those, one of the 4 criteria areas.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, then the other side of that is that we could go forward and say that we aren't, that we are not going to fund the extracurricular as we stand here today, but between the federal grant, which will come back to us at some point, and then also the breakage that we know is going to happen, one way or the other, we're going to get to grandma's house here safely and be able to fund extracurricular for our kids at the middle school.
Yeah, and just so that everybody heard that, if anybody was away from the screen for a minute, bottom line being extracurriculars happen, it may be that they're funded through the grant money and not through us approving them as a part of this budget.
Can you guys give me a sense of how you see, I think I'm just generally concerned about grant money and how this affects our budgeting and planning for next year. So I would really like to hear more from more experienced, just different points of view about how this would affect our ability to fund and provide these things the next time around. Or would it not at all? Am I misunderstanding the potential hurdles in the future if we're using grant money to cover these things now, but we need to fully fund them ourselves again a year from now, 2 years from now?
Jenny, from a neophyte perspective, since I'm new to the district, how it operates, if you went, let's say, zeroed out the activity fund for this year for grants, and next year put it back in, based on what I saw and experienced in the Board of Finance, someone's going to ask, why is there 1,000% increase in this one account? And they'll say, well, you don't need that. You just went up by 1,000%. It's unnecessary sort of drama that you may, and hopefully you can explain it clearly. They'll understand that you had grants and they'll go get the grant again. Like, well, the grant was a one-time grant. It's just, you open yourself up to saying, well, you must not have needed because you took it out of your operation. That's just, from my one-time experience, because to me, the percentage increase doesn't mean anything. Because if I had $1 and I moved it to $1,000, the percentage increase is going to look very significant. But what to me is the dollar amount increase. But like if you zero it out, it's going to show a significant dollar amount increase also, because it went from 0 to 40, whatever $1,000. So it's an optics thing from my perspective.
Jenny, I could answer that too, and I think that I'd be really interested to hear, to your point, the veteran thoughts about this. We talked about this as a potential challenge with sort of supplanting any of these areas that once it's gone or once it's replaced, it is very difficult to have the conversation about bringing it back. And as much as we want to be able to forecast towards the future of what we know that we'll support, we also recognize that things happen and things change. Some of the conversation that we had that was helpful for me was around how did things work with Project Lead the Way, and so that went from being grant funded to a slow shift of that funding to back to the board. So even though we have a 2-year grant, let's say that we're moving forward, year 1, we were going to fully fund the student activities out of the grant. Year 2, even if we, rather than fully funding it a second year in a row, I would recommend that we partially fund it so that we ease our way back into fully funding those going into the future. And I think that given that that we've seen that was successful with Project Lead the Way, there's already sort of a language that we could fall back on. There's a community understanding of kind of playing out the long game. I feel like the only way I would feel comfortable making that recommendation is if we were connecting back to that as a past practice, because I think that really was a good example of how to shift from to district sustainability.
John, I've got a question, because it seems like we've spent an hour kind of dancing around this. How much are we thinking we're gonna cut? If it's not 150, it sounds like it's not going to be 150. And who, somebody needs to go first on what's on the block, because it doesn't sound like we want to cut anything.
Randy, I have your healthcare number if that affects your sequence of.
Yeah, and Randy, I don't know that we necessarily do need to cut anything.
Okay.
It may be that it is a function of sort of having a less conservative outlook when it comes to the breakages, having, sort of using some of the money for PD earlier this year. It may be a function of just the way that we go through that process where we don't end up cutting anything. So I don't know if anybody is going to start with that, but certainly people are welcome to do what
that's fantastic. That's not what I came into the meeting understanding the meeting was going to be about. So if that's where we're at, then we can adjourn. I'm elated. No, in seriousness, I mean, if we're not cutting anything, then we're good. We're done. Are we not?
I like that.
I mean, I certainly like that too.
Yeah.
Jeff, does that seem like a realistic outcome? And obviously,
No.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. But there's some stuff that Dr. Harrison sent out that I think we could consider, because Lord knows I hope they're right. There's about $8,000 that we spend each year on Zoom. May we never spend that ever again. But even if we do, that would be federal money, because it falls into that category. And so we've got federal money that is going to be coming to us through December of 2024. So I think it's reasonable to assume that while Zoom is just so much fun, and I know we all love doing it, that we might choose other ways to meet and communicate. So that would be something. There is the issue about the PE para, and I think that's $16,176.88. I think that is a want as opposed to a need. And I think we would be well to consider that. Miscellaneous PD for 5,000, and summer curriculum work was also in that in some of those discussions for a total of 10,000. The curriculum work could very easily fall into the federal guidelines as well. And again, so those are the things, to Jenny's concern, that are other than the PE para that are one-trip ponies, so to speak, and they probably won't happen again in terms of stuff that would be covered by federal funds. And I mean, the federal funds are there, and I think we'd be foolish not to use them.
So I one thing, I guess, where's the $3,000 for the extra, the person that does the counting of the kids and stuff? We had talked about dropping one of the consultants for Clarence. Right. You found another consultant who did like that deeper.
We talked
report.
About cutting Prada.
You talked about replacing Prada with MMI. The Board of Finance talked about cutting that. I would advocate against that, because we need to have the ability to look forward about what our needs are going forward. And if you don't have that, you get blind.
No, I'm sorry. I think we were talking about keep MMI and
cut Prada.
So
discontinue
the dollar
our-
amount, though it says Prada, don't get tied up saying it's just for a demographer. It could be Prada, it could be M&I, whatever. The dollar amount would state it because we don't have two different dollar amounts in there.
Got it. Okay. Got it. So there's only one consultant
Yes.
to the next budget. Okay. That makes more sense. Can we just, is there a sense of, I think Jenny kind of asked this question earlier, of the curriculum work that could be done this summer out of the 150, you know, we assume we're going to have some dollars that are kind of left over spending this year that we could put towards curriculum work. Can we make an assumption about it's 30,000, it's 20,000, just so we can start chipping away at the 150? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, like Jeff, what Randy said, great, you know, during the meeting, we don't think we're going to need to cut anything. And then your response was, no, you don't think that that's going to happen. So where is there an amount in your head that you're thinking we are going to need to cut? I don't know. Like you said, we feel like we're kind of dancing around this, but I mean, typically we work our way down to an amount that we know we can't get away from. You know, like whether it's $300,000 or it's $40,000, we account for breakage, we look at health insurance, we estimate our expenses for the end of the year, we see what we can put money towards before everybody walks out the door, and then we say, all right, we're left with this bucket amount that we have to account for somehow. And that just seems very ambiguous right now. So I think we are talking in circles.
The message that I don't want to send to the Board of Finance, nor do I want to send it to the town, is that they cut us 150, and it meant nothing. Everything remains the same because of outside forces. I think it's incumbent upon us to look at where we are spending money. A lot of the things that I listed, which is a total of $39,855, are expenses that we have incurred because of COVID, and COVID and federal funds are now there available to us to help us bridge that gap. So why wouldn't we use those monies to help us reduce the budget? So I mean, in terms of, well, I'll go ahead and throw this out here. I think we'll comfortably have $50,000 worth of break. Comfortably have $50,000
for next year.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I'm looking here at $40,000 of cuts to the actual budget.
Although I want to just put a pin there and say I want to make the pitch again for the PE para, because I think it's being dismissed too lightly, and the value of that position. I'm talking as a coach, like having somebody in that space makes a massive difference.
Okay, and then in terms of how do we get to the rest? Well, we know we're going to have money at the end of the year. And we know that we've set aside $80,000 for curriculum work. So we can certainly take $40,000 or $50,000 of that, and whether it be curriculum work, whether it be the technology plan, which is about 40 grand. We wouldn't want to spend all of it because not all the computers are dead. But to think that all these Chromebooks are alive and well in June and then all drop dead on the 1st of July is not realistic. So I'm sure we would benefit from I'm sure that the faculty and principals would benefit from starting to make those purchases now so that their staff can be fully up and running.
Yeah.
So I think between those three things, and John and I can fight about the PE pair, that would be fun. But I think that gets us comfortably to 150. I think the Board of Finance would say, good job in using the federal funds to help get you where you need to go. I mean, heck, I would if I was sitting on that board. So that would be a place where I would start.
Jeff, are you assuming in your explanation that that we're using federal funds for the social worker?
No.
No, okay. I mean, how much of this as a matter of procedure has to be voted on or proposed specifically? I mean, could it be as simple as we all agree, we make a motion, in a week to take the $8,000 Zoom money, apply federal funds to $8,000 in Zoom, and the rest is going to come out in the wash?
Nope. The only motion that we have to pass is to reduce our budget by $150,000. So we're going to go from let's see, we're going to go from the 17,000,007 to $17,561,143, and that's what we will vote in. That means that there'll be a motion, there'll be a second, there won't be any discussion because that's where we have to end up. That's the only thing that's the only thing that we absolutely have to do.
Jenny, and I would ask that be the only thing that you do, because in the sort of real world, what's going to happen is once you guys approve a number, at the end, as a year finishes out, I'm going to look at what our actual expenditures are, and I'm going to go cut up that number and put it where it needs to be based on our actual expenditures, because we based it on assumptions in January. A lot of data will have come through between January and June. So I'll take that number and allocate where it needs to be. If you do specific amounts, you're tying my hands where the data then indicate we need to be there. So I go distribute it based on, obviously salaries take up most of it, benefits, and then we say, okay, we went over in this account, so I got to put some more there. That sort of, if you just keep it as a flat line number, that gives me the flexibility to do what I need to do to make sure everything's taken care of.
I don't
Right. So Jeff,
I don't think that's what I'm really, Clarence, I completely understand what you're saying, but we have always voted very specifically about what cuts will be.
Right.
Like, this position is coming out, this this program, this amount for PD. We've always specified exactly how we're going to account for the reduction that's been passed on to us from the Board of Finance. So if we do just say we're reducing the budget by $150,000 and there's no direction given to how we're going to get there, that would be a significant departure from past experience. I mean, I don't have an objection either way. That's where my question to Jeff about, the 8,000 versus what do we need to specify? That's where my question is coming from.
Okay, well, what we need to specify is the 17,561,143.
Yep.
What I think the public would want to know, and what the Board of Finance would want to know is, okay, how did you get there? And if we got there because we use federal funds for A, B, and C, we cut these dollars, X, Y, and Z, and MMOQ was something else, then that equals 150, and that becomes a safe landing place then.
But that
right, and we are assuming, yeah. So we are also saying we're going to assume a little more risk than we had originally thought when we passed the budget, right? Because Jeff, you just said, like, part of that 150,000 is that we're assuming 50,000 breakage, which we had thought we had budgeted enough for. I think in the conversation that John and Dr. Harrison and Mr. Zachary had, the Board of Finance, they actually asked us to take a little more risk. So I think I think there's comfort also knowing now that we've looked at our breakage from past years. There's like an average of around $35,000. So we're being a little more open to risk, right? For
much higher than
35. It's been higher than that.
Yeah, no, I said,
even better.
I said 35 was the lowest that I've seen.
The lowest it's been in, right, I wrote that down actually, in 10 years. So we're actually taking a kind of calculated risk, which seems like it's worth taking. Yeah.
Why would we do that? Why would we make an assumption on breakage? Not that it's not going to happen when there's federal money for $50,000. So you don't file for the grant, you assume breakage. That doesn't make any sense to me.
I think I mean, I think the assumption is we're going to try to use every bit of the money that's available to us, right? It just may not be that money that's available to us gets used on this. Is that an accurate assumption, Dr. Harrison and
Well,
Clarence?
it can only be used on certain things. So
Right. Well, I think I heard Dr. Harrison say that we can use it for the extracurricular.
Right.
There's been a liberalization of the usage that they've
Sorry, Clarence?
communicated to us. So that's what Dr. Harrison is talking about. So we will apply whatever funds we get, we will put to use, and the usual supplant versus,
Right.
that whole argument that they're basically giving us to say, look, guys, we get it. You need a little more wiggle room there, and they've verbally communicated that will be allowed.
Yeah, and I think ultimately we have to show our work because it's the right thing to do for the public. It's the right thing to do for the Board of Finance, to say this is how we believe it is a reasonable path to get there. But we all know that this is a fluid situation where various grant money can come in, various breakage can occur, and so we ultimately what we are actually approving is just the final number.
yeah, but you have to put dollars, as Jenny made the point earlier, you have to put dollars
This is
in
not
an
making
account.
sense to me.
You have to put
Am I
dollars
the
in an
only one?
account. And then when you, hold on a second, you're right, Jenny, you said it earlier and I'll say it again. You have to put numbers in an account. And when you don't spend those numbers, then you have to have transfers. That's why we have a transfers report. So you can't just say it's 17.5, have a nice day. You can't. I mean, I know that's not what Clarence is saying, but listen, I get it, whether it's breakage, whether it's federal grant money. I'm just trying to put numbers around things. If we say we can do federal grant money for the student activities and the social worker, then we should just be clear on that. And if we can't, or we don't know what the grant money is going to be, it could be zero. We should talk about that too. I'm a little bit confused because it seems like we're saying both things.
So my understanding with the social worker is there's not a comfort level in using grant money because then that person's job could go away in 2 years because there's no, we'd prefer to keep that person as a full-time, an FTE, and not use grant money. You could still put it in the application, right? So it's an open opportunity for next year if that funding goes away, right? But or maybe we need additional social work, short-term social work support, and we think that's a need in the application. We could always put that, but that grant funding shouldn't cover a full-time position because we know we need this long-term. It's not just a short-term coverage for COVID-related concerns.
It's not that it can't, it's that we think it's a wise decision if we can avoid it to avoid using grant money for full-time positions. We are absolutely allowed to do it.
When the grant money comes in, Clarence, where will the credit go?
It will depend on the grant application, Randy, because when we apply, we say we need this much for this much that, and we have to base it on what we put in the application. Okay,
let's say we put the social worker in, we put student activities. Where would the credit go?
I would choose, if you leave it to me, I'd put it in student activities because I prefer to have a social worker in an operating budget so there's no risk there, but that's not my call.
Okay, but the sheet that you guys sent around, or Clarence sent around earlier, or sorry, Rydell sent around earlier, had an asterisk next to both of these, meaning that they could both be covered by COVID federal grants.
Correct. There's the possibility and probability are the two different, is the distinction there I think he's making. I don't want to speak for Rydell, but I think he's saying both are possible, but if given a preference, he'd have to choose one over the other.
That's exactly it. So Randy, both of them are allowable uses of the federal funds. The preference with the social worker, I would prefer that we not use those funds for the social worker position for the reasons I stated earlier.
Right.
To your question of when we get the grant approval, so when our application is approved, we would have to draw those funds down just like we do. They would function the same way as any of our other federal grants like IDEA. We would have to draw them down and then reimburse the general fund.
Okay, and so my confusion was, I thought there was an opportunity to do both, but there is not, more than likely.
Well, there is. It's just the choice of not wanting to have your one of your employees half tied to a federal fund.
Randy, there's an opportunity both. There's an opportunity. I think what Dr. Harris is saying, he'd like to forego one of those opportunities because in order to secure the employee in long-term, it's better long-term for the district if we forego that opportunity
Right.
regarding for the social worker.
So not take the federal money, even if it's available. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, we're still taking the federal money. We would just spend it on something else other than that social worker position. So every dollar that's offered to us from the ESSER 2 grant or from the rescue grant, the plan is to spend every penny of it. If it's not spent in order to supplant something that would otherwise have been in the operating budget, then it will be spent on something else. And
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so, and I'm going to leave this point because I'm sorry, you guys are probably tired of talking. You're going to file an application, you're going to list a bunch of things on there, and they're going to grant you the grant based on what you file, right? And you're going to have, you might have the social worker position, or you're not. Listen, I don't care. I know the money, the amount of money that we're going to get is a number. And I don't really care to a certain extent where it goes, but I just want to make sure we're not foregoing a request because we don't want it to show up as a credit against a salary.
No,
that's all.
Yeah, we
Randy,
won't.
Randy, if someone's going to offer money to help the children of Easton and Reading and Region 9, I'm taking the money.
Yep. We'll take the
Period.
money.
I'm taking the money.
But
I'm not leaving any dollars on the table. And another thing, Randy, I don't give money back. So when we get the grant money, it's getting spent.
So, and I think this goes a lot to to a little bit of what Jenny was getting at before, is this, like, what is the danger in the way that we spend this grant money? Like, what is the trap there? Because people talk about the fiscal cliff that you can run into. And I frankly think a lot of boards of education and districts are going to get themselves in trouble by not being very careful about this conversation.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think you're being presumptuous that other boards are concerned about that today, but maybe.
To try to put a pair of pants on this. I've got $23,679 in federal money for the Zoom, for the miscellaneous PD, and for the summer curriculum work that would all fall under the federal grant. I've got $45,381 for student activities. I've got $16,176 for the PE para. Sorry, John. I've got $30,000 for curriculum work. That would be money that we would use. That will be in excess at the end of the year. I have $3,000 more for Prada. That takes us to $119,236. I say that we can set aside $30,000 for breakage, which gets us to 150. And
Mr. Parker, can I ask you to remove the $3,000 for Prada? Because remove Prada's name from, we still need the money for demographer, regardless if it's Prada or anyone else.
I said it was only in there once.
It's only, yes.
Never named you.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand. So we take that out, and either we take $3,000 out of library books, or we make the breakage 33,000.
Yeah, breakage. I would go breakage higher, and I think it's very reasonable to assume breakage higher. That gives us the PE para back.
I would leave I would like to leave
No,
para in there as long as humanly possible. I mean, unless we're really backed up against a wall to make that cut.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about the difference, right, that person can make in that room, it is night and day.
Chairman, may I make a suggestion?
Yeah, please.
The amount of the PE para, I know we start off this conversation, or at least the dialogue via email, about taking out of healthcare. I think you'd be very comfortable taking that 16,000 or whatever that, Mr. Parker, the cost is out of the healthcare. I've run an estimate based on Randy's request, and I think that the fund balance will be robust enough that at the end of the year, that the 16,000 spread out over the multitude of our health claims accounts would be de minimis.
We retain the recommended rate of our sort of that professionals have recommended.
Well, based on the assumptions I made, we'd end up the year about in excess of $600,000 in the reserve. And right now we're at 683. That's with the inflows and outflows.
What's that as a percentage?
Excuse me?
Can we use insurance money like that to cover?
No, we're not talking about using insurance money. We're talking about reducing the amount we budgeted for it.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And specifically, I think the recommendation is to make sure that we have somewhere between 20 and 25%.
I think so. I have to go look it up, but I
It's
think
2
that
to
was-
3 months. But I'm gonna.
and that would be more than 3 months.
No, not really. Not at 600. But can we just for the 20th meeting? Can we have the math on that, Clarence? Just like
I can show it to you now, Randy.
perfect.
You know what? Let me help here a little bit, because I've got a very strong feeling that that's something that we should not do. It wasn't all that long ago, 2012, for those keeping score, where the Board of Finance and the first selectman came to the Board of Education and said, you have a balance in your insurance reserve of $371,000, and we need that to balance the increase for next year. And if you have a problem with your claims, then we'll back you up. A year and a half later, we had a shortfall of $1.2 million in claims.
2015.
2015. Okay, 3 years. Thank you, Randy. Now the $371,000 isn't going to save us, but I think we send the wrong message when twice since 2015 we've had to go to the Board of Finance, one for 1.2 and one for 600,000, and to say that we're going to take out some money for this upcoming year to help so that we can keep all the programs that we want. I would not want to be standing in front of the town trying to explain, well, we ran out of money for claims, and these were one of the decisions that we made.
So, Mr. Parker, I appreciate that, and that makes when I heard at the Board of Finance they talk about take more risk, to me the one risk that doesn't affect children is in the claims profile. So right now we're averaging $183,000 per month. So 3 months of that is less than 600,000, and I'm not talking about taking it below 600,000. So if for me, taking 16,000 out would still leave us above 600,000 in reserve. And if the data I sent you shows you that our year-to-date average is 183, our prior year was 175, and the 3-year average is 199 per month. So that's no matter either 1 year, last year, 3 year, we still have 3 months worth of reserve, even if we took out the 16,000 for the para. That's why I'm sort of comfortable.
Mm-hmm. And all I'm saying is that the optics of that I don't think would be good, and the money that we have in the reserve, plus the money that we've set aside for this year, needs to take care of the next 15 months of claims, and we'll thank goodness we'll be out of the COVID grip here sometime in the fall, I think. My crystal ball is partly cloudy, so I can't be sure, but we've certainly had many a year where we've come close to $3 million in claims, and I think it'd be a very, very be short-sighted, I think, frankly, if we were to start taking money out of that.
Ms. Park, I'll defer to your optics argument. Like I said, I wasn't here, but to me, $16,000 is not going to swing the pendulum. But I will defer to the optics. Like I said, I was not here when the prior request was made. But to respond to the Board of Finance comment about take more risk, that to me is the one risk that doesn't affect children in the classroom.
Clarence, I disagree with Jeff on this. I understand. I've been here for all of those go back to the town votes. We're not talking about $600,000. We're not talking about bottoming out the account. You're talking about $16,000. I don't think that would be an irresponsible move to make, and I don't think it would be indefensible.
Can I just ask a question before so this year we budgeted 2.6. what did Brown and Brown recommend for next year?
That depends on which stop loss you guys want to choose. I can pull that up. We share that all comes down to you do the one stop loss or two stop loss. I think it was 2.8 was the number.
That's correct. It was, it was an increase of 200,000.
Yes.
Okay, and what did we budget for next year?
If you kept
2.8?
it flat. 2.6. You kept it at 2.6.
So we've budgeted 200,000 less than theoretically Brown and Brown is eyeballing our budget. Okay. And just you have two numbers here, Clarence, on your report you sent out. 183 is your current year-to-date average claims, but then up above it's claims and admin fees. So should we be looking at the 183 or the 193?
So can I share my screen again? I'll just show it.
Yeah.
Here we go. Can you all see that?
Yes.
So, wait a minute. You're not, hold on, let me stop. I think I'm sharing the wrong thing.
So can I just ask another question? Like, if we're worried about the $16,000 and we're going to have some reserve money left over, and we're worried that we may have to go back to the town at some point, like, why wouldn't we just put a little bit of the extra reserve funds into our healthcare balance?
That would be an easy solution.
Right. Yep.
So if you look on the screen, what you from column A through AA is basically what you have in the report I sent you. It's the exact same data. And so in order to answer Randy's question, I tried to extrapolate. So right now, we're showing at the end of March, our reserve balance of 683,602. So that's sort of our starting point for April. So claims, to Randy's down here, our monthly average for claims is 183,871. So I'm going to use that as our average for the next 3 months, since that's been our average. So that's what you see up here. I initially started doing HSA paid on a monthly average, and I realized it would make it too small. So then I looked back historically, we've been at around 180, 175, whatever. So I just added another $100,000 to bring it to 191,000, just to keep in line with historical averages. Then admin fees, I did something similar. So the net, so we start off to 683,602. If I extrapolate the 3 months, so 1 month is 183, 3 months is 551. If I add the 551 to the year-to-date claims of 1.6, it gives us 2.2. So the math, you start at 683, you subtract this, then you add back the deposits, we end up at 629. So that's my point. We still above, if our 3-year average has been 199, our last year was 177, and year-to-date is 183, we're still at 3 months reserves at 600 plus. So if we're at 629, you take 16 away, we're still at 600. And to Devin's point, if you have money left at the end of the year, you can add that to the reserve balance also.
Yeah, just one question, Clarence, and I don't question your math, but we started the year at 718.
Yep.
Our monthly claims are lower than what we budgeted, and yet our reserve balance has gone down.
Because of the deposits. You've got 1.6, and also remember the claims are trailing. Remember the whole thing we had about if you look at the numbers, if you look at the average claims, January was an unusually low month because of the issue Anthem had. So it's throwing off the average. For instance, in Reading, their claims for February was $3,000. Their claims for March was $700,000. So it's going to throw off things that's still sort of trailing into the system, getting those claims that the system was down through January. So I think there's still some lag in the system, Randy, is basically what I'm saying.
Does everybody remember that error with Anthem, that sort of issue that they were having?
Yeah, but that hold on a second. But is the monthly average 183 or is it something different? Because it doesn't matter.
183.
Okay. So, and we budgeted 216. So it's whatever.
But Randy, remember, the money stays with the town until we request it. So if we never end up requesting it, we don't get the money. So we don't have that money per se. When we have the need to make deposits, we request it from the town. So it's sitting in the town's account. So until we actually request the money, it's never on our books.
I understand. But here's my point. If you scroll back up again where you rolled it forward 3 months and we ended at 629. something doesn't make any sense to me. If we started the year at 718 and we're averaging 30,000 less a month in claims, how our balance can go down to 629. I don't believe the 629 number, Clarence, that's all. But we don't have to go through it tonight. I maybe for the 20th.
So Randy, what I'd say to you, if you look at it, it's based on some assumptions. And the assumptions, for instance, right now, as the end of March, we've only paid $86,000 in admin fees. You see that in the report I sent you. But look at the previous years. We've been at 177, 178, 191. So the 85 is definitely lower than what we paid in the previous year. So I bumped that up another 100 grand just because if we've only paid 85,974 in the last 4 years, so it's been up close to 175. I have to assume there's another 100 grand of admin fees coming at some point.
And is that how the reserve actually ends up going down despite?
Yes.
Okay. Because you're accounting for the fact that we're off pace on the admin fees.
Correct. Because if you look at the line here in 15, 16,
yeah.
Well, these years we didn't have HSA. Let's go back to years HA. 178, 177. We're at 85 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Can't we just ask them?
Okay, well then the answer is then we're not below budget then on a monthly basis. We're actually above budget. It's
yes,
just
you're
not
above budget. The 183 is yes, you're above yes.
That's right.
But
That's exactly
assuming
right.
it's average of 183 in the claims, you still end up being below the sort of 200 grand per month.
What's the line number 19, Clarence? Column AA.
That is the average monthly claims and admin fees.
Okay, so if you
including the assumption?
No, this is just year to date. I didn't do that in the assumption. I factor that in when I added the $100,000 to the admin fees over here.
So if we average with the 100,000, that would be a much higher number.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, listen, I agree with Jeff, but 16,000 is a rounding error in a $17.5 million budget. I mean, we're playing with breakage at this point. We might as well play with 16,000, but I'm a little bit disillusioned with the whole process. Same token, if we don't have to if we can move stuff around and use grants and get there, I guess sign me up. It's there's nothing to be upset about, really. So, which is a great thing. So,
Randy, we've never had this opportunity in the past.
Right.
We've never gotten this kind of federal money. We haven't gotten this kind of state money. This is all new territory for us. Absolutely,
and it's allowed us to bring back, positions, many of which are needed. I'll debate on the PE para, but but we're bringing back a librarian, a media specialist, a fourth grade teacher. We're adding staff when our student population is relatively flat. Hopefully it's flattened and trending back up again, but we're adding several staff, which, Board of Finance in years past has just taken us to the woodshed on. And sometimes I don't blame them, but same token, we have different, obligations to the kids in town and different needs than we did 5 years ago, let alone 25 years ago. So, no, I get it. We good graces of Washington, D.C. open up their wallets, and taxpayers around the whole country sending money to the schools. It's a huge advantage this year.
I just want to remind everybody who's listening and ourselves that we're not adding positions, that most of these are positions that are being restored after significant and damaging cuts that were made over the last couple of years. And I think the reason I keep speaking so strongly about grant money being put towards some of these restorations is that we fought really hard to get them back. The community has spoken up in expressing their concern and their disappointment over losing a media specialist. Extracurriculars are a hot button issue. They are sorely missed and debated. I mean, it's been years of us trying to grapple back towards getting these things on the books. And I remain concerned about using one-time fixes that could potentially put us in a position where we're trying to claw our way back to keeping these things, moving forward. So I don't want us to be cavalier or quick to use grant funds towards extracurricular activities unless we have a really solid plan for reinstituting it. And as Dr. Harrison mentioned, if we can present or somebody can show me a really sound financial plan for bringing them back in that isn't going to make it look like we're trying to add something new in a couple of years, then I can get behind it. And the same thing with the social worker or for anything else that we see as core needs that we didn't want cut before. And we don't want to have to keep fighting to get back. So I just want to caution us against, too rosy a picture here, and just remember where we came from, and appreciate the support from the Board of Finance and the community for this budget as it was presented, not with the caveat that there was going to be, magic money coming from somewhere that was going to make it possible. Sorry, be quiet now.
No, you make a good point. If we don't do this, Jenny, I don't know what the other option is other than making real cuts.
But it doesn't sound like, from what I'm hearing about breakage, overage at the end of the year, some federal money towards things like Zoom or whatever else that work, that it's necessary. I'm not hearing in the discussion that it's necessary to take $50,000 of federal funds and put them towards extracurriculars, or $50,000 towards the social worker. Okay. What I'm hearing is that it's possible to make this work even without doing those things.
Yeah, I think
I didn't hear that, but okay.
So what I would,
or I misunderstand.
No, I think there's a lot of room for that interpretation of it, and what I would ask is that our friends in central office help us to make that case, that between sort of what we're looking at now and some of the discussions we've had before, and when we need to really sort of finalize this decision on April 20th, that we have that sort of just laid out clearly. I think, Jenny, you're spot on that we got to have the math that shows it. If we're going to use those funds for that, we need to have a solid plan for here's how we would phase that into the budget over the course of the next couple of years, et cetera. And I think it's a very reasonable ask.
Mr. Chairman,
well, John, I think the only thing here in play out of the $69,000 in federal funds that we're using, 23 are for things that are really COVID related, and when COVID goes, I don't see the need. It really comes back to the student activities. I mean, what we're talking about here is taking federal funds and putting it toward the student activity account, and that's a 1, 2, or 3 year opportunity, and so that's where I think the discussion point comes in terms of what's the plan to fund that for the long term.
Right. Yeah. Clarence.
Chair, may I make a request?
Please.
Mr. Parker, while you were running through your list, I was trying to run the numbers for Randy, so I didn't catch everything you said. Do you mind sharing that to me via email so I can plug it to satisfy the chairman's request about us?
I am happy to do that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any other discussion? Anything else that we want to make sure that we are thinking about, being mindful of, as we sort of in our own minds? I know we're all just going to spend spring break really thinking about this and nothing else, obviously. Anything else that we should be chewing on?
So John, just for my clarity, so for the 20th, we're coming back with a plan for moving from the use of federal funds back to the, how to get from using federal funds for next year to what's our plan to get back to that being in the operating budget. And that's specifically for the student activities, correct?
I think that's probably the right answer.
So is it how you phase from using federal funds next year, 100% of the, if we were to use 100% of the federal funds for next year, how you would phase over the next few years, use to like basically go from what you said, I think earlier was to 50% to like basically wean us off using federal funds to be funded through the budget.
Yeah, for us to move forward,
Yeah, Devin's got
for us
that.
to move forward feeling comfortable about using those funds for that purpose, to account for that chunk of the $150,000 reduction.
And so that's 41,000. And so
46, right?
45, a little over 45.
45,381.
and then breakage.
Breakage is 33.
I think it's, well, if you do the PE pair, it's closer to 50, but
I would argue it's at 50.
Well, I would argue it's 33.
Right. Yeah.
Can
Understood.
I ask how people are coming up with their breakage numbers?
out of thin air, there's a little right here and it's pulled down.
I'm
Right.
going by what Jeff said. We
Yeah,
haven't
it's-
had under $35,000 breakage in 10 years. So even if we met in the middle at 40,
That is
between
correct.
30 and 50,
Right.
maybe or 33. If we go 33, we could go up to 41.5 and have a happy middle.
I mean, it's pretty late in the spring. Do we anticipate retirements or movement or shifting? Do we have any?
I
Yes,
think the issue is you may get some of the para type
Indication?
positions, but certified teaching staff, they had an economic incentive to let us know earlier. Now, some people may move, whatever, but it's, you know, the economic incentive is passed.
But
Well,
$40,000 isn't that much. I mean, if we have a 35,000 breakage in a normal, like if we've always been over that, like that's not actually, this year we've had multiple people kind of leave because they found other positions. I guess it's just not that much money.
it isn't. You're exactly right.
I'm not trying to, it'd be great if we just found, but 35,000, it's just not in a almost $18 million budget. Just like the Board of Finance basically thinks that we're going to have 1% breakage is what they said during the meeting, which is how they come to not even 1%, like 0.8%, right? Because
Right.
about 150,000.
Right.
So we're estimating that we're going to actually have 0.3-ish% of breakage.
Right. And I think 35 is still too conservative. I think they told us to be a little bit less conservative, and I think a little bit less is closer to 45, 50.
But we don't have any information yet that would lead us down the path.
Yeah, I think we can work on that a little bit ahead of the next meeting as well to make sure we're having a more informed discussion about that.
But
Randy, just did a
Yeah.
little calculation. The 180, if I add in the admin costs, the monthly average for the end of the year goes to 199. So it's still below the 200,000 for the.
I mean, intuitively, Clarence, if we're below the budget at 216, our balance, our fund balance should go up from 720. That's all I'm
But
saying.
Randy, that assumes we draw the money from the town and put it in there.
No, I know, but if we don't draw it, then we have unspent funds from our budget for our $17 million budget last year. And that goes to the first conversation we had 2 hours ago.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's all driven on claims, and I can't predict what the claims are going to be. So we're making these assumptions about that it'll stay at that amount. So it's one of those, the data has to come in before we can assess it.
I understand. That's a given. That's a pure assumption. But if we just assume the monthly average, I think what we're trying to understand here tonight is that what would our fund balance be? Would it be 720? It should be, all I'm saying, it should be higher than 720 if we spend less than we budgeted, period. But I know the next 3 months are educated guesses on what our expenses are going to be. That's all I'm saying, versus 629 versus 829. So, because frankly, not budgeting what Brown and Brown is telling us next year's claims should be, is a $200,000 sort of hole.
That was based on the 2 stop loss. So you all made a decision about 1 stop loss versus 2 stop loss, and about what our actual claims history has been, and their job is to mitigate risk and at least give us a number we have to decide whether we're going to accept that number based on our actual history.
All right, I'm not sure what that means. We're self-insured, but
It means, Randy, that being self-insured, we can decide how much we're going to put away into the account. And
Yeah.
if they're telling us 2.8 versus a 2-stop loss, we can either accept that or say, you know what, we'll take a little risk and do a 1-stop loss. Or
oh, I'm sorry, you're saying that we're going to have one event that hits the stop loss versus 2 events, or
Yes.
they're saying that. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And at 1 stop, what's the number?
I think it was closer to the 2.6 or slightly above the 2.6. That's why we went with the 1-stop, because we didn't have that. The 2-stop loss was sort of a worst case scenario. I have to go back and look at the report, but it's what we shared earlier.
It's happened. It's
It's
happened.
happening in Reading right now. I mean, like I say,
Yeah.
Reading is
Okay.
taking a beating this year.
Yep. Okay.
Flip it to us next year.
Yep. I follow you. Very good.
Okay. Any additional conversation? Okay.
John, I think I am still a little, I don't know if uncertain is the word about next steps. I mean, I understand what you're saying, procedurally, all we really need to do is vote on reducing the budget by $150,000. I think we're getting closer to consensus on how we'd like to see this play out. But I'm not comfortable with just signing on, stamping approval of the reduction of the 150,000 and then just kind of leaving the rest to fall into place.
Yeah.
I think if we all walk away from the 20th with slightly different interpretations of how that's going to happen, or expectations of how central office is going to, implement arriving at that $150,000, that's not an expectation that I had or think is really a wise.
I agree. And I would not be supportive of that. I think the right approach is that we have one or more slides that clearly articulate, here is our plan for doing this, recognizing that some of the dynamics of this situation are fluid, and we may have to change some of those things just by virtue of how things work out. But we should have a plan that makes sense to us and that we believe in, and that we can say, yeah, that's how we get to the 150.
It has always been voted on. Randy, Jeff, and anybody else, am I not?
No, it'll be voted on. It'll be voted on the 20th. And to John's point, we'll have line items with numbers next to them. One of the numbers that we haven't done in the past, though, Jenny, is going to say breakage, and we're going to make an assumption there.
Mhm.
And we're also going to have a line item that I think says federal grants, and we're going to have an assumption there as well. And these are all educated assumptions.
Mhm.
But no, I think what John said is what I anticipated, is that we're going to have a page or two that says, here's where the 150 comes from. And yeah, we're going to have a line item budget. Clarence has to have that because he has to be able to compare that to when next year the expenses start coming in, what's above and what's below. And then we'll have transfer reports like we have every year. So I don't think that's the only change in my mind. There's 2 changes. There's the breakage and the federal grant money, and sort of where we allocate that federal grant money, as I tortured everybody an hour ago.
So based on what I sent you all earlier today with the scenarios, and it has line items, and except for the insurance, because what I recommended for insurance, I mean, it could come from multiple areas. I don't know what to do with breakage. I understand what we mean when we say that, but there's no line item that says breakage. So it's really confusing to know what to come back to you with, to just say, I'm just going to find $33,000. Like, I get what we're saying, but
that's why we've never done it in the past, right? You're 100% right. Yeah.
Right. I think
for every salary account, I could use that for breaks. Which one do I use? Is it para? Is it custodian? Is it teacher?
Yeah.
It's just.
And I don't think that necessarily, I mean, you could put it against the salary count for teachers, probably is the sort of biggest pot that comes out of, and the most likely scenario for where we think that happens. But this is us taking the direction of the Board of Finance and applying a little bit more risk there in the category of breakage. and buttoning ourselves up on a lot of the other items that we've discussed tonight.
But I think, Rydell and Clarence are right. They need direction, because the budget is built on line item by line item. And, where do you pull 33,000 or 49,000 or whatever, which account? It's a good point.
Well, I mean, from teacher salaries, you could put it there.
It
right?
doesn't roll up that way. You have every teacher has a line item, I assume, right, Clarence, or no?
You're on mute.
Set up each account. There's a 111 account at Samuel Staples. There's a 111 at Helen Keller. Which one do I use? Where do I assume the break? Is it a custodian? Is it a para? Is it an administrator? I would need to know the breakage by Lily. Is it a fourth grade teacher? Because I have a line for fourth grade teachers.
Yeah.
I have a question. Does whatever we present as the path to I think we already mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, it doesn't necessarily have to total 150.
Correct.
I mean, we can say as a board, we are reducing, the $8,000 for Zoom. We're we're making X reductions, but they don't necessarily need to add up to the $150,000.
That's right. And the difference, that is correct. And the difference between those specific line items and the 150 is the breakage.
But wouldn't you then be approving? So you would vote to approve a budget that's cut less than the 150?
No.
It's
the only place I could sort of park the breakage is, without having any negative effect anywhere else, is the excess cost line, because that's a plug assumption number anyway. That's the only place I can think where I could put it and doesn't harm anything, and it's one place to go to where you could sort of isolate it.
Clarence, I think that's a great idea.
That works well.
A separate line item, and then as the breakage happens, you can make a notation next to that number, and then when we hit that number,
Streamers.
Because when I have actual detail of breakage, I can attribute to the particular account of wherever it occurs and offset it in the excess cost. But that's the only place I can do it where it's clean and it doesn't affect anything else.
I like that a lot.
Yep.
Does that mean I have your approval to do that?
to present that on the 20th? Yes.
All right.
I guess I see these as two different things. Like, one is procedurally, we have to pass the budget at the amount set, reduced by $150,000.
Yes.
The other is more board recommendation for the pathway to, for the books to be balanced the way they need to be. And that doesn't necessarily need to total, add up to that total $150,000.
Yeah, but it sounds like we have a way to use there's a line item in the accounting that would let us do that.
Okay.
Put that in excess. So I think if we can get both, sort of accomplish both tasks, then fantastic.
So, lack of a better explanation, Jenny, we're going to put the social worker in at the full amount, and Clarence is going to move up his excess reimbursement or excess whatever, and by that same number. And if somebody retires August 1st, then we're going to move some stuff around, I think.
Well said.
Yeah. And would that show up in transfer reports?
No.
Okay.
No.
You'll let us know when that's happening, so we can all applaud that it worked out the way we wanted it to.
It will.
Okay. Good. All right.
I'm sorry to be that confident, but I've seen the movie and I know how it ends. So.
Okay. Any additional discussion on this?
I have another question. I'm sorry for all the questions, but tomorrow's a Friday, and then let's say next
Spring
week
break.
Then
Monday, Tuesday. Yeah.
And then it's a Monday, and then we're back, and I don't want to be back asking the same questions.
Right.
So I have 45 in student activities, 33 in breakage. So with the accounts that I know we talked about Zoom, right? And some of those areas where I put the asterisk where it can be covered by federal grants. That makes
Right.
sense. But we didn't talk about the school psychologist, PD, speech PD, like the other pieces that I offered up as potential areas of cuts. Are those in? They're in?
Yeah, I don't think we're interested in making those cuts if we can avoid it.
I think the director of digital learning will benefit by having the 2 tech assistants.
Yep.
I think that the media center para will be needed for the new media center.
Yep.
Specialist to help get he or she up to speed, and I think that the media center para could also then be part of the team that the digital director of learning would be using to help implement their program for how we're going to move forward with technology.
Jeff, do the numbers that you put forward 20 minutes ago,
Yep.
I guess without reducing healthcare, those and breakage is somewhere between 35 and 50. That gets us to 150?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, so
You're gonna-
30,000 curriculum work, right, for the summer would be coming out of, that's what the assumption came from.
Exactly. That we're looking at a surplus at the end of the year, probably, well, between 100 and 200, and that's being, 100 is very conservative. And then the curriculum work is going to start in June anyway. So why don't we take a portion? I mean, we got $80,000 set for curriculum work. We're only taking 30 here to get the ball rolling.
Okay. And you're going to share that with the board and with Clarence, and we'll talk about it again
Yeah,
in 2 weeks.
I'll humbly ask you.
Go ahead and type this up. I mean, it's it's short. There's not a lot of stuff on it, and I'll send it to everyone, and then I'll be working off the same sheet.
Yep.
Jeff, I don't want to put any time constraints on you, but I'm getting on a plane at 5:20 tomorrow. So if you can get it to me before 2:30, I'll crank it out as quickly as possible. After that, I can't guarantee my internet access. So
you will get it 10 minutes after this meeting is over.
I'd appreciate it, sir.
Well, then let's wrap this meeting.
Yeah, here.
All right. Very good. Anything else on this? I'm joking about, sort of curtailing the conversation here. I definitely want people to make sure they're heard. Are we good? Okay. All right, good. That takes us to public comment. We'll give people some time. I'll ask other board members to just take a look around, see if you see anybody we're missing. Okay, hearing none. Board member comment?
I just want to thank our administrators for one more go around sitting here through these torturous conversations at 10 o'clock at night after hiking through Carline a million times a day. I'm sure it is just mind numbing at times, and we really, really appreciate that you stick with us through the time it takes us to process and get to the place where we need to be.
Here.
Mm-hmm.
And have a good spring break.
Yeah, please. Then I think we are looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Randy. Do I have a second? Jenny, thank you very much for the second. All in favor? Unanimously adjourned at 10:04 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good night.
Thanks. Good night.